Welcome to the Learning Can't Wait podcast, a Full Mind production. At Full Mind, our vision is to ensure every child has access to an exceptional education. Each episode, we will be joined by pathfinders within and around the education space who are bringing about transformational change on behalf of deserving students. I am your host, Haley Spirabauer. Welcome back, everybody, to the Learning Can't Wait podcast. I'm thrilled to introduce you to our next guest. We have Kathryn Starke, a national literacy consultant, and she has a few other titles that she's being humble that I'm sure we'll talk about today during our episode, but I'm so happy to have her here. Welcome, Kathryn.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be with you today.
Well, Kathryn, you and I have a lot in common in our education background, and I know we're going to have a great conversation. And so I'm thinking we should just dive right in. What do you think?
I'm ready.
All right. So our first question is, how did you come to be the personal and professional version of yourself?
Gosh, I love that question. And I personally think about this question daily. Because I think we're always trying to be the best version of ourselves. And I think a lot of times for me, I have to remind myself that there is a professional side and there is just me, even though a lot of times my world very much collides. So everything I do is all about reading, writing, publishing, speaking. I mean, that's just me all of the time. So whether it's me reading at the beach or reading a book that has been sent to us as a manuscript, that is me. So at the end of the day, I think that just like the warm, friendly person who loves reading, writing, and teaching is me, both personally and professionally.
It's great to hear you introduce yourself as somebody who's so passionate about this topic. How did it start? Tell me about your education, about teachers that made an impact in your life, and what led you really to focus on this at the end of the day.
So my mom was a teacher, and my mom is one of 8 kids, 7 girls, 1 boy. Everybody was in teaching except the boy and one of the sisters. And so, by childhood, I was immersed into visiting my librarian aunts and my mom teacher and everything like that. I was the child that played school. I went to school and I came home and I played school. And I did lesson plans and I taught invisible children. I did not teach stuffed animals. In my mind, I saw my class and they were very well behaved, invisible children. And I knew that I was going to be an elementary school teacher. I can't say actually that I had a teacher that made me want to be a great teacher. I had some favorite teachers, like my first grade teacher, my second grade teacher, my fifth grade teacher, my favorite teachers. But unfortunately, I also had some not amazing, lovely teachers. And I really think they were the ones that made me want to be a better teacher for all kids.
Oh, I love that hot take. I love it.
It's true. It's true. When I think about it, I remember being in some classrooms as a child, as a kindergartner, as a 3rd grader, and thinking, I'm going to be a teacher and I'm going to create a classroom that everybody wants to come to. I mean, that was really my thing. And I've been so happy being in education. It was where I was meant to be, for sure.
Kathryn, you not only are in education, but you delve deep into the world of literacy. And I don't know if anybody's been paying attention, but there's quite the debate in literacy right now. There's a class action lawsuit against Fountas and Pinnell. I will say, I don't know if anyone knows I'm being sarcastic here because there was another podcast in this space that really broke open a story pretty widely to families and schools, and it resulted in a sweeping change nationally. What's your take on the current events, and where do you think we go from here?
So to me, it's interesting because being in the literacy space, I've been discussing the issues with the teaching of reading for years, for decades, because traveling around the country, every school teaches differently. Every community is different. Every community has different access to different programs. So it was, to me, it's fascinating that 2020 really highlighted the lack of instructional education in reading for mainstream media. You know, prior to 2020, prior to a podcast, it was definitely isolated into schools, and every school was doing their own thing at the end of the day. I am a firm believer in quality literacy education, and I have a master's in literacy. And so the science of reading, which is what everyone is saying now, to me, I'm like, thanks for using that term, because we've been using the science of reading for over 45 years. Obviously, the implementation has been different from school division to school division, because at the end of the day, the only people who really knew the science of reading were reading specialists and literacy consultants. Now, to be able to bring in everybody, to bring in all of the elementary teachers, to bringing in all the principals, the only way that anything can be changed is to bring everybody to the table to have conversations. So in that way, I think everybody now talking about literacy is only a positive.
Absolutely. I obviously am a teacher, and my friends who are not were calling me when Sold a Story came out, asking me, can you evaluate my school's literacy curriculum? Like, where are we, Haley? Like, what should we do? And so I appreciate that it's part of the dialogue, and it's a research-based part of the dialogue, not just some of the other trends we're seeing in education right now are feelings-based and not really research-based. So I appreciate when we ground ourselves in data and we use data to drive our instructional decisions.
That's the thing that I still always say, you know, the children dictate what we need to teach, right? So if you're teaching third grade reading and you have a bunch of children that don't know how to decode multisyllabic words or don't know how to spell particular words together, that's what you're doing. But if you have kindergartners that can't even tell you what happened in the story, then we also have to do that. So I believe that our children and our data determine what and how we teach.
Yeah, absolutely. One thing I know you're very passionate about is something that I'm very passionate about, which is getting kids to fall in love with reading.
Yes.
A lot follows from falling in love with reading.
Yes.
So let's hear a little bit about your philosophy there. And then I know I told you I was going to have you talk about some other things you've done. One thing I'm really curious to talk about, and I have a great connection to, is your work at Tackle Reading.
Yay, great. Well, I do believe that when we match kids with a book that is of interest to them that they can read, it's a game changer. And I really stand by that. I recall even being given tons of assignments to read in school, especially like middle school and high school. And you're like, why am I reading this book? I can't really relate to it. And I was a great reader. I, was the one that was always called on to read aloud because I knew how to decode every word on the page. Don't really ask me how to analyze that text, because that certainly wasn't part of the instruction I was given. Mine was like how to decode the words on the page. And so I find that today I really believe in figuring out kids. I love to know what children hate, love, like, their least favorite subject, their hardest subject, their favorite part of the day. All that gives me is information to give them the best book to read. And I've had third grade boys that come to me and they're like, hi, Miss Starke, I hate reading. And I'm like, thank you so much for telling me, because I do need to know that. And then number two, what's your favorite thing to do in life? Oh, it's playing basketball. I'm going to find a book for you. And that's what I feel is the combination of the best book. I love being like a book matchmaker, if you will. So now, as like a literacy specialist and a publisher, that's what I feel is my thing to do, is to match kids with the best book of interest to them. And a combination of that with quality reading education, reading and writing, that is, to me, the ticket.
I could not agree more. I think the best job I've ever had is when I was hired to teach fifth grade reading, and my interview, the hiring partner, my good friend, Dr. Sam Fragamini, said to me, your job is to have kids fall in love with reading. And I was teaching fifth grade reading in Harlem, where the average reading level for students was about
Yes.
second grade. And
Yes.
the whole work was focused on getting kids to fall in love with reading so that everything else could follow. Because then you're not fighting when
Yeah.
you are tackling a more densely populated text, or a text that's unfamiliar, or content that's unknown,
Yes.
because you're like kind of adding to their bank on good books, things that get them excited, whether it be sneakers or shoes or funny stories. It really, really, really helps. Okay, so tell us about tackle reading.
So as you alluded to, there's just a lot of different things that I do that all relate to reading and writing and publishing. And so, gosh, 9 years ago, believe it or not, I was traveling around the country. I was helping train teachers in the teaching of reading, primarily on the East Coast, from New York City down to Charleston, South Carolina, around Virginia, where I live. And, people would say, Kathryn, are you going to write a book? Because you come into schools or you speak, but if we don't work with you, we don't really, know what you're saying, blah, blah, blah. Are you going to put something together? I was like, no, there's too many books out there about teaching reading and writing. And I am not a professor and I am not a theorist. I really come from the lens of quality reading instruction and writing and getting kids engaged. But had the wonderful opportunity to be a guest author with the Commanders, who were in my backyard essentially. And they had this amazing program. And at the time, 9 years ago, it was called Redskins Read Program. And they really did a great job of getting kids excited about reading. And I helped them implement a summer reading program around the Richmond, Virginia area, where it really came down to just the number of minutes children were reading. And I say all the time, like, I can tell you to read for 20 minutes for some reason, with your hero in a jersey that you watch on TV every Sunday, when he says to read every 20, for 20 minutes every day, that makes a greater impact. So I wrote Tackle Reading with the help of 45 contributing writers. So authors, NFL athletes, Dolly Parton Foundation, teachers, all these great people. And the whole goal was just to write a book that was jargon, no jargon. There was no jargon. It was going to be a practical book that, parents and teachers could pick up and enjoy and read, and could really instill a love of reading at home and at school. And then I said, okay, well, I'm going to bring this book to life. We're going to bring tackle reading to life. And I'm going to call the NFL and we're going to have this book in all of the cities. And please note, I had zero connection to the NFL. I just had this idea in my mind. And I was able to connect with some incredible people. Michelle Staubach Grimes, whose father happens to be a very famous quarterback, Roger Staubach. She was one of the first people that reached out to me. She was an author as well. And we just decided to combine forces and share my children's book and her children's book, and call different teams that we had personal connections to or that we wanted to work with, and say, we really want to do this event with you. We're going to donate some books. Please have some people from your staff, your cheerleaders, your coaches, whatever, go into a school of your choice and read. And that we had 15 teams agree to do that with us on the first year. And 9 years later, we now have sponsorship from Dr. Seuss Enterprises and Random House Children's Books. And we have the support of NFL Legends. And we just did the 9th annual event this past March 3rd in about 35 cities around the country.
Oh my gosh, I missed it by a matter of days. Okay, so first of all, I'm like smiling ear to ear because literally I have such a alignment with how you think and how you act. I worked at a school in Harlem for 10 years and I built the summer reading program. And all I wanted to do
Yes.
was get books in kids' hands. And we were lucky enough to raise funds to allow for kids to go book shopping. We both took a field trip, every single grade in the school, to the local Barnes and Noble. And we had our own bookstore. Every year we did this. We went to the library, went to Barnes and Noble, and then we had our own bookstore in our school where they got to go home with 12 books every summer. And
Golly,
that was
that is
just part of it.
huge.
And then the second part I want to connect to, and this is not about me, but I'm like laughing, is
Yeah.
that first year that I worked at the school, and when I got hired, they said your job is to help kids fall in love with reading. The school had quite a few celebrity like funders and investors and
Yep.
partners, and I made this large football field,
Okay.
and it was like I think I can say who it was. It's like pretty public. Like Tiki Barber was involved in this football
Yeah.
program we ran,
Yep.
and he had written a book and published it with his brother about
Yes.
Tiki and Ron. And the kids had a football player that they had to track the whole year. They had a 50 book goal, and they had to track it the whole year, their progress towards 50 books.
Amazing.
And all these celebrities, including Tiki Barber, would come and like talk to the kids about their progress. And
Yeah.
there were all these really great people who would come and talk to the kids and work with the kids and read with the
I
kids.
love it.
And
I
you're
love
right.
it.
No, my kids could listen to me till I was blue in the face. They used to say, Miss G, which was my name then, you call my mom on a Friday night and I don't want to talk about reading. And I'd be like, but I do. But if Tiki says it, they're way more willing to talk about reading.
Yes. I love it. And the Barber boys actually have a very strong connection to Virginia. And a lot of people use that children's book as part of the Taco Reading Day. So I love that you did that. Oh my gosh, I know, great minds. But you made me think about something, which is that when I did it the first year, it literally was, I did this book, let's, elevate the message of the book, let's bring the book to life. I love to do like a good book launch for every book that we publish. And then I was going to be done. And then like the second year came and I had athletes and principals ask if we were doing this again. And I'm like, yes, we are. And then the third year I had athletes and so it is amazing because we love it for our kids, but I am telling you, like I have had the most incredible, talented, even pro football whole Hall of Famers that are like, Kathryn, can we tackle reading again? And I just feel like that engagement where the readers are excited, the teachers are excited, the kids are excited, the sponsors are excited. That's when you know, okay, I guess you are doing it again. Because
It's
it is
worth it.
making an
It's worth the
impact in some
investment of time,
capacity.
resources, etc.
Yep.
Kathryn, I kind of lost my questions that I had prepared for this conversation in my desire to just like giggle about how much we have in common and what great work you're doing and really how honored I am to have you here on the podcast today. But going back a little bit to the work you're doing both as a literacy consultant and having published books and all of that, what do you think where do you think we should be putting our attention in the next 10 years of education? Like, what is the most important lever we could be pulling?
Again, I love your questions because you ask questions that I lose sleep over, where it's like, what do we better? How do we need to improve? Why are we still having the same conversation in 2025? And so I really am finding, and I say this because I worked myself on research and development in ed tech in 2017. And honestly, it was before AI was again a mainstream. In my head, I was like, we're gonna create something where the computer is teaching the children and the children are interacting and blah 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 blah. And I learned I had very expensive taste in technology, but in 2017, AI wasn't again it's implemented as easy as it is now. So I'm saying this because when I think about education, I believe that there's some incredible platforms and applications of technology that should be used as tools. I also believe that many schools are over reliant on the results they believe are coming out of using these tools. And I feel like we have got to recognize the importance of a teacher, a qualified teacher, retaining a qualified teacher who can build relationships with kids, actually know the ins and outs, the strengths and challenges of every single child, and then recognize the real books to put in their hands, the hands-on engaging lessons that should be taking place, and then adding quality tools from technology to support their learning. We should not ever have 90% of anything that we're relying on beyond the teacher and the child.
Whew, that's a word on great teachers. I appreciate you acknowledging here the power and impact a great teacher could have, and schools can invest in retaining those teachers. You know, so many schools are facing shortages today, and the reality is not every school has access to the number of teachers they need, the quality of teachers they need. And so it's an important point you're making here about the investment schools can and should make in ensuring every classroom is filled with an incredible leader in front of it. Kathryn, I am really excited about the fact that, you know, you're constantly on a public stage talking about your work. I saw on your LinkedIn that you're speaking at the World Literacy Summit upcoming. What are things that you want people to know about this work and what impact they can have in children's lives?
That's the thing, is just everybody can make a difference in reading. So I'm excited about the World Literacy Summit because it's going to be people in all different organizations, schools, universities, businesses, all of these, you know, institutions and individuals that are making an impact in literacy. And I think is so important to remember that everybody does have something to contribute, right? So I've been meeting with people who just want to volunteer to read in classrooms. You know, there's other people that are tutoring. There's other people that want to donate books. There's other people that want to, you know, come in schools and actually help teachers. There's so many ways to help. I also think it's hilarious when businesses, you know, have these big old budgets and they annually give. And I'll be like, you know, if you could just give me $5,000, which is nothing, I can actually get a ton of books for some schools that don't have it. And so I feel like if we could think about the collaboration instead of sometimes like the competition, that I don't understand why that happens in elementary school land. I think elementary school land should be the most pleasant place on earth, and that we should really just align with like-minded people that are really ready to serve. And I feel like if we just come to the table recognizing like what gifts we can give that are going to make a difference in the lives of kids, I think we're going to be so much better and so much further along in education, especially here in America.
Ooh, rising tides lift all ships. I feel like maybe that should be my podcast title, but you know, that's a story for another time. Kathryn, I have one final question for you. You've been so enlightening and really such a bright spirit in this conversation about literacy and education. I'm curious what advice you would give a teacher starting their career today.
Gosh, let me tell you, I'm going to tell every teacher that she needs to do what she feels is right inside of her. Because I was that fresh teacher out of college, like ready to do whatever. And there was no shortage when I came along. And I was told in interviews, I think you're a little too creative for this school. I think you're a little too nice for this population. I think you're a little too out of the box for our school community. And interesting, because I thought that's what we wanted teachers to be. But thankfully, I ended up in an inner city school community where I spent most of my career in inner city schools. It was second and third and first grade, and I was given the freedom to do what I thought was best, but I had to prove that it was working with my data. So I want brand new teachers to feel comfortable sharing their knowledge, sharing their expertise, sharing their ideas, trying something new, because no one's going to argue with great results. And a lot of great, young, new, innovative teachers have wonderful ideas that are yielding great results.
I love it. Be yourself, trust yourself. Those are important messages for teachers to hear. Kathryn, it has been such a pleasure interviewing you today. Thank you so much for coming on the Learning Can't Wait podcast.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be connected to you.
Well, look, now it's forever. So be careful what you wish for. Kathryn, thank you again. And thank you everybody for tuning in today. Thanks for listening to the Learning Can't Wait podcast. If you like what you heard, please rate, review, and share this episode. Be the first to know when we have a new episode by subscribing wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to be a guest on the show or have a suggestion for an episode, email us at podcast@fullmindlearning.com.